Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 56th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this video, I'd like to talk about something that sort of dawned on me after all the videos I've done, and that leads me to the border of folly, to be quite honest. And that is the recognition that basically, you have these debates online with people, you exchange arguments, and you sort of pretend in these arguments that there is somebody that is right, that is correct, and you base it on facts and various other criteria like science and all kinds of other things, and somebody that's wrong. So wrong, like for instance, he's saying things that are false, notably false, like he's lying, and it's hearsay, for instance, instead of science. And so you'd say, well, okay, this one, I'll follow whatever this one is saying, and I'll discard whatever this one is saying. But the implications of what I was saying all along in a few videos back about the fact that we don't have several parallel realities to test the full implications of any of our actions means that basically um, you have no idea if the person that is right is actually wrong from a multidimensional perspective. So I'll give you some very concrete examples. For instance, let's say that you tell someone, for instance, that is about to go, like an 18-year-old that is about to choose between studying and traveling the world. And you're going to tell them, well, statistics and science and facts tell you that if you don't have a diploma, you have this and this and this many chances that you end up in poverty and that your life will be completely a waste and all that stuff. And then you have somebody that just says from the gut feeling, follow your heart, whatever, do whatever feels right to you. And that's just intuitive blah blah, of course, that sort of is not based on any facts, any science, any studies and everything. But then, of course, from a multidimensional perspective, of course, you have the timeline of that person, and like one of them is he has this diploma, and he becomes a very famous physician or something, and then he invents a kind of a destructive weapon that is going to destroy humanity, or even something just even less tragic. He's just going to have a miserable, depressing life because he'll always regret about what if. And in this one, let's say that he's going to be a hobo for 5 years, living miserably, but then, by a stroke of luck, he then becomes an artist or something successful. So he has like a little down here through in his life. But during that life, he saves, because he just happens to sleep on the street, and he saves this little girl or something that is crossing the street without looking, saves the girl's life, and that girl then becomes the president of a country and prevents a major World War III from happening somewhere in the future. Like peace. And so, from this little tale, of course, it's not to say um, that any of these are certain. It's just an example to tell you that there is absolutely no way for anyone, for any human, to rely on facts that you know at a certain point in time to know what is good or bad in the absolute. And so you could have lies, for instance, like imagine, for instance, that this guy would say, follow your heart because that's what's going to bring you happiness. And then that guy is confronted with the person being a hobo and being in the dumps, See, I told you, you're lying. Look how miserable I am. Of course, that's changing 5 years, still 5 years later. Maybe by that time, this guy is dead, the one that gave him the advice. So we'd never know that he'd actually done the right thing, quote unquote. And the reason why this is so off putting and offsetting is that it basically throws reason out of the window. It's as if rationality, it's as if you were left to your own devices, and it didn't even matter if things were right or wrong in the sense that we use it, like humans. Like, for instance, somebody could lie to your face and say something completely ridiculous, but the reverberation of that lie into the future would have positive consequences. And somebody could tell you all the right facts and be correct about everything. And again, the reverberation of that fact on your actions into the future would create something that we would agree on is bad. And that is why once you reach that stage, if you do not develop some kind of communication or way of communicating with your higher self, with your higher intuition, then you just end up in the psychiatric hospital because you're completely lost in reality because you don't know what to trust, where to go, or what to do. And that's kind of a bit how I feel right now because I'm very poor at this kind of personal communication about how to manage my own life and my own decisions, my own personal decisions. I'm very good in pooling, well, I think I am at least, pooling information from the absolute that are interesting in the abstract, in the theory, and stitching these ideas together. But applying them in real life for me is really, really difficult. Um, and the other thing that is really dangerous when you reach that kind of understanding is that it can be so tempting for the ego to get a grab of it and say, hooray, I will never lose another debate because what can you object to this? What can you object to this argument that since any and all actions, and that includes what people say, have an infinite reverberation into the future, and that you cannot predict the consequences of all of these words or these actions, then there's no way for you to categorize things in good, bad, or right, false, and use that as a discernment mechanism for what to follow and what not to follow. And so, um, just about this is one danger that I'm facing as well because, of course, I don't like to be wrong. I don't like to be told that I'm wrong, like most people, I guess. And I defend my ideas and stuff. And with this coronavirus, I end up in these insane debates where people go check the nitty gritty statistics, details, and this and that. And of course, you'll always find someone that has read more articles and that has more expertise in a topic in terms of materialist science, of course, and this, what we call facts, what we sort of agree on facts in the empirical realm. But when you start arguing from a gut feeling perspective, there's no more communication possible between these two worlds. It's just a bridge, a chasm that is impossible to cross. Because on the lower end of the spectrum, you have animal instincts, which you cannot argue. I mean, you cannot argue, but it's not something that you can conceptualize. So it's more. This is more uh, like always in the present moment, and so you don't you don't discuss what you're about to do. You just do it. So basically, it's the typical example of a car rushing towards you, and you have an instinctive reaction to that, what is happening at that moment, and you don't rationalize it, You don't analyze it. You don't check the facts of whether jumping left or right gives you a higher chance of survival. And you go and read some papers and stuff before you do the decision. You just act. Instant action. Then there is the sort of the rational stage where you check this. You're in this rights, the facts, the science, the empirical stuff, and you try to use rationality and all kinds of concepts and stuff to guide your life, um, keeping a sort of a detachment, of course, to animal instincts. Otherwise, you would die, in certain circumstances where you have to put your mind aside. But then, as you approach this new barrier where it's gut feeling on an other level, where it's not life threatening, basically, like you are not life threatened, but yet you say something that you don't really know why you're saying it. It may be right, maybe wrong, but you feel that it's the right thing to say at that time. And you also know that maybe according to these the current mainstream thinking, you might be completely contradicted and ridiculed and ever. And you still know that it's the right thing to do, though. And I mean, I wonder if that's how Galileo experienced things when he was publishing his works on his new model for the solar system, because he knew that in the times that he was publishing this, everybody would sort of like say, like, what the hell are you publishing? These are lies, and we all know that the Earth is at the center of the universe. Um, Yet he still pushed forward because he had his own kind of internal logic, which was the emergence of empiricism, which at that time was the old the kind of, well, it's the same kind of situation where the only point of reference is yourself, because there's no outside validator but yourself, because nobody is at an empirical or scientific kind of way of thinking yet. And so you appear crazy to everyone, and you have to still persist in following your own kind of internal compass. And yet you know that there's this danger that it might be an ego trip, um, of you like telling yourself fairy tales that you're so smart and all the other people are stupid. And that's also something that might get you to a psychiatric hospital, because you have people in there that believe that they are correct and they're right and they're living in a parallel dimension, and that they're entities that, or whatever, they're inventing kind of stories, or they're schizophrenic or whatever, and it's completely true to them, and their internal compass is probably not this higher self. It's something like they get information from, I don't know, like really chaotic ways. And so um I really don't know how to stabilize that. But I'm coming to this realization now, and I realize this is probably the next step for me, something to work on to make sure that um i don't I don't fall into several of these traps, whether it is having being in an ego trip, whether it is confusing gut feelings that come from my unconscious and traumas that I haven't healed yet, rather than from a real higher source of intuition, that where I recognize this whole scheme, that basically I have to trust something higher to make the right quote unquote decision, because I have to rely on some kind of external source that has access to the infinite reverberation of any of my actions, to let it guide me or give me an indications of what to do or what to say in certain moments. And of course, not surrendering to entirely, but at least trying it from time to time, because that's ultimately how new ways of thinking that become the norm emerge. Like people that believed in science didn't just jump off from a cliff because they wrote a formula that they believed that they could fly. I mean, they tested things very, very cautiously. They did experiments one after the other, and it took decades and decades of testing, of trying, before they settled for a new kind of um, um, internal compass for um, how to make decisions in their lives, and what is right and what is wrong. And the same, I think, is going to be true now, is that you'll have these intuitions, and sometimes you'll ignore them, sometimes you'll act on them, or you'll first try to listen to your intuitions on things that arguably from your perspective are not of high there's not a high stake in it. For instance, you're at a store and you're thinking, okay, should I buy this fruit or whatever? And then you have this information that says, don't do it, it's going to give you diarrhea. You say, well, I'm going to buy it anyways. And then you buy it and you have diarrhea. You're like, oh, okay, maybe I'll listen to that intuition next time. And so you make sort of mental notes, you make little experimentations on things that are harmless or not of high stake, like, for instance, saving someone's life or something, or inventing a new weapon or whatever, um, and see what the result is. And then gradually sort of expanding your this channels to get more and more and follow more and more this intuition, once you know what you're doing. The same as science, basically. It's the same process basically. You wait for things to stabilize, you wait for, I don't know how many peer-reviewed blah blah blah, tests and experiments, before you start doing something and believing in something. Here it's just that you are your own kind of uh, there's nobody else to sort of measure with you and validate with you. You have to be your own validator, because there's no other way. Because you cannot make somebody else listen in to this voice that you've heard in your head that said, don't buy this rotten vegetable because it's going to give you diarrhea. Nobody's in your head except yourself. So you cannot share that. And nobody can follow your life, and all the details of everything that happens, and follow you all the way to your toilet to see if you actually had diarrhea or not. So that's also one of the biggest difficulties here, is that ultimately you are the only person that can validate your all of this. And that's so difficult to trust yourself, because it was so comfortable, basically, living in this scientific paradigm where we could all sort of rely on this trusted whatever source, and you can blindly follow whatever a paper in science has spewed out. It's like, okay, that's the new reality, that's what I trust. Now it's back to yourself, and that can be so destabilizing. So I don't know, maybe share your own experiments if you have any suggestions on how to open up to intuition a bit more, and this higher self, because I have major difficulties. Or if you want to share a story of some of these intuitions and whether how it has played out, feel free, and talk to you in the next video.